You're listening to What My Mom Calls the Greatest Show on Earth. I'm Christopher Story, along with Mr. David Becker, producing the program today. We'll be with you for the next hour. Got a great broadcast in store for you on this 16th day of September. It is, it's a great day to be alive, isn't it? Man, I'm just happy to be here today. By the way, B.B. King's birthday today. I'm a huge fan of B.B. King. And I've got a song that I'd like to play for you in just a little bit. It's the quintessential, if you will, B.B. King song. It's a song that he did with U2 while U2 was still cool. You know what I'm talking about? When Love Comes to Town? Might even play that for you here on Alaska Matters Radio. Jerry Anderson will join me in just a little bit. In fact, I'm looking over my shoulder. Any second, Mr. Anderson will be calling in from Missouri, where he is currently located. He's on assignment for Alaska Matters. He'll be calling in with his thoughts on home rule. Should Homer become a home rule city, or should we remain a first-class city? We'll talk about that. Not so much a debate between Jerry and I as much as it is, I'm hoping, an education for maybe both you and I. Maybe it'll turn out to be an education only for me. Next week, by the way, Point Counterpoint, we'll have Ken Kastner, who has been a promoter of Home Rule. He'll be a guest on the program. And this week, Jerry Anderson taking the con. Now, Jerry, a longtime Homer resident, at least 40, maybe 50, maybe 150 years. We don't really know. He is ageless. If you know Jerry, you know that he just always looks the same. Doesn't seem to age a day. Anyway, bottom line is Jerry has immersed himself in this issue for a long period of time. In fact, was a detractor of it, 30, 35 years ago, is still a detractor of home rule. We'll find out why. Corbin Arno may make his way to the program. He is looking for your vote here in Homer. Anyway, he'd like to be your next city council person, one of your next city council people. And if we can get Corbin on the line and away from his small business long enough to take a few minutes to spend with you, then maybe after a 1 o'clock news we can coordinate with him and get him here with you. I'd love for you to meet him, get to know him more, and find out why I think you in the Homer area ought to consider voting for Corbin Arno. Also, our Alaskan Mindbender, brought to you by Blackwater Bend Espresso. When good won't do, get gourmet. I want one, maybe even two of you. Don't know. It just depends on the mood I find myself in, whether or not I will be giving out one or two. At least one of you will be going to Blackwater Bend Espresso for free. You're going to take away a coffee card. No, I didn't say a cup of coffee. Any radio program can give away a cup of coffee. This is not any radio program. This is what my mom calls the greatest show on earth. I keep thinking that one day she'll actually mean it. No, I think she does mean it. You ask her in public next time you see her, say, Lan, do you really think it's the greatest show on earth? I'll bet you anything she'll say, yeah, it really is. Proposition 1, a little bit of a reality check. I want to talk about that. You may have seen the news that BP's laying off, 475 people, or projected to lay off 475 people. And sure enough, as you knew, you and I both knew this would come. I should have voted for Prop 1. Look, well, you know what? Let me just save it. I've got a little bit of a reality check, and I want to just kind of bring us back to where we were, why we did what we did, and why Alaska voted as Alaska did, and where do we go from here. This isn't a right-wrong thing. This isn't a left-right thing. This is just common sense thing. And there is some common sense. Plus, I've got a letter to the editor from the Billings Gazette that will fascinate you and probably, I don't know, make you feel like you're not alone in the world. And this is an interesting article I found in the Illinois Policy website. It's called illinoispolicy.org. Food stamp enrollment in Illinois outpaces job creation nearly 2-to-1. We'll talk about that and what it could mean to you should we pass the minimum wage initiative here, Proposition 3. Remember, Prop is Proposition 2, and Proposition 3 coming up on the November ballot is the minimum wage increase, which, by the way, speaking of which, Dan Sullivan has flip-flopped on that issue. Your Republican senatorial candidate has flip-flopped, and I hope he didn't hurt his back when he did it, but up until the primary, he was against the minimum wage increase. Now, for political convenience, Mr. Sullivan finds himself in favor of the minimum wage increase, much to my disappointment, but I'll talk about that and what exactly I think we and you can do about that. In addition to, I know, you're probably thinking to yourself, Chris, it's an hour. You've just outlined like 8 hours worth of material. I do, if time allows, and if not, we can always do this next week. But I found this really cool idea in a California coffee shop that, well, it might influence how you and I go about doing business in the future. Well, for Dave Becker and myself, I want to remind you this truly is your time, and you were born with a purpose and endowed with the seeds of greatness. Alaska Matters will continue. Don't you go anywhere. Much more to come here on what my mom calls the greatest show on earth. I'm Chris Story, and you're listening to what my mom calls the greatest show on earth. Alaska Matters Radio begins and ends when I say it does. All right. It actually begins and ends when Mr. Becker says it does. He is your broadcast producer and engineer back up at the mothership of KPEN FM 102. Mr. Jerry Anderson is on the line. We'll get to Jerry in a moment, and we're going to be talking about home rule and how it could apply to you here in Homer. I'd say listen up around the peninsula. You may think to yourself, well, this is a Homer issue, and to a certain extent it is, but I believe also it's stemming from a larger conversation that ought to be had from sea to shining sea, from every state in the union. One in every 57 states should be having this conversation, and that is, how do you take back your town? That's where it's at. I've been having a lot of conversations with friends lately saying, hey, look, we got Dan Sullivan flip-flopping here. Well, still, he's better than the incumbent. We got to vote for him. What does the Republican Party stand for? What does the Democratic Party stand for? How about Libertarian Party, Green Party, No Party, Your Party? It's all about you and your core beliefs, your principles, and your values. And do your beliefs and principles, are they reflected in those that are governing for you and on your behalf, even at the local level? And if not, what are you doing complaining about Washington, D.C.? If you're not able to, willing to, or think that you could do anything about what's happening in your own backyard, why are you worried about George Jefferson's Washington, D.C. backyard? That's the question. All right, before we get to Jerry, and we'll not debate, like I said before, it's not a debate. I was in favor of and have moderately remained in favor of home rule for a singular reason, and that is strong mayoral form of government. Well, Jerry says there's an alternate or an alternative way of looking at or doing business in Homer as a strong mayor form of government without going to home rule. We'll give him an opportunity to weigh in on that. Maybe he'll even change my mind. We'll see. Maybe yours too. Alaskan Mindbender brought to you by Blackwater Bend Espresso. When good won't do, get gourmet. Look, award-winning custom roasted beans, that's what it's all about. Every cup is made to perfection by Pat and her family at Blackwater Bend Espresso, not your average drip. Somebody asked me the other day, Chris, is it too late to get a Bender blender? Can I still get a Bender blender? Do you think Blackwater Bend's still making them? Yeah, they are. They make those year-round. Treat yourself to a caramel mocha today. Oh, I had a salted caramel soy mocha. As you know, I don't drink dairy, so I had a soy salted caramel mocha the other day. Give me a minute while I reflect on it, please. All right. Here's your question. I want to send you out to Blackwater Bend Espresso for free. Answer this question by texting me your name and answer to 299-7653. 299-7653. The question is, when was the last time Mount Augustine erupted? 1986, 2006, or 1976? Text me your name and answer, 299-7653. I want you to go out to Blackwater Bend Espresso for free. And come on, can you imagine? That's like $25 worth of coffee. And you text message. Imagine that you're making, this is a minimum wage question now, and so it takes you 10 seconds to send a text. You're getting $25. What is that an hour? It's incalculable. Jerry Anderson, I mean, that's incalculable. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, absolutely.
And nobody can figure out that kind of math. Hi, Jerry, and welcome to the program. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate it, Chris. Good to talk to you.
Well, you are one of Alaska's very own, I think one of the minds that I respect and always like to bounce ideas off of. And sometimes they come back and hurt me, but that's what I appreciate about you, Jerry, is you never pull punches and you never have to wonder where you are with Jerry Anderson. He'll tell you exactly where he is. So, Jerry, the question is home rule versus first class. If you would, please, just quickly, sort of in a nutshell, describe as you see it, home rule versus first class, because we have a lot of things to discuss here, but just put us on the same footing.
Well, the only things that I can see looking through this is that on property taxes, the Home Rule Charter can require voter approval to authorize levy of property taxes. Whereas on the first-class city, voter approval is not required. However, some municipal general law governments have more restrictive limitations imposed at the local level. So that doesn't really look like a whole lot of change to me. On sales tax, in a home rule city, the rate of levy may be limited by the charter, and requirements for voter approval may also be limited or may be set. But in a first-class city, there's no limit on the rate of levy, and voter approval is required. So one thing that the home rule do would allow them to raise the tax without requiring voter approval.
Well, and just not to interrupt you, Jerry, but them, of course, would be the council that is elected by the people. So, in fact, we do have a way to check what's happening at the tax level, right? I mean, it couldn't just go up without some sort of backstop by the people, and that would come in the form of who we elect as our council.
That is correct. Now, as far as I can determine, most of the problems that you have pointed out and many others have pointed out with the city of Homer government, the problem could be cured by deep sixing the manager form of government and going to a strong mayor. Now, you can do that without going to home rule.
And okay, well, so a little background then. We've got Soldotna listening in, Kenai, Seward, Homer, and other places, but those specifically, Seward is home rule, Kenai is home rule, Soldotna and Homer are first-class city, meaning we basically are by default then looking to statute. Whatever state statute allows and calls for, that's what we operate under, and we don't determine or set the course of our own direction, our own charter, which I like to use the word constitution. We could write a constitution. Jerry, from the beginning, I've said, hey, I'm all for home rule simply for the fact that we'd have an opportunity within that constitution to say we'll be managed by a strong mayor that is reachable by the people, meaning we'll elect somebody to actually be our leader or the main representative. Like now we have managers, you said. So how could we then default to or go to a strong manager form of government without then going to home rule? How can you do that under first class? Where's it allowed for?
In first class, you can just simply have an initiative petition to deep six the city manager form of government and adopt the strong mayor, and it goes to a vote of the people. And if it passes, the city manager packs his bags, and the mayor steps up to the podium. You know, there's home rule and mayor versus manager have no connection whatsoever.
Okay. Well, let me draw that connection and have you discuss it then. The connection I've made is home rule allows for you to form that style of government, and so that is the connection. But you're saying, hey, wait a minute, Chris and Homer et al., you don't need to go home rule and open up potential other cans of worms if, in fact, what you really seek is a strong mayor form of government.
That's correct. Home rule will have no effect on how you change from city manager to strong mayor or anything else. The only thing home rule does, it gives the local government just a little bit more power in a few selected designated areas, and as a general rule, giving government more power has never been very palatable to me.
Now, speaking of which, thank you for that segue. It's a nice segue into the last time Homer took up home rule. It's my understanding you were not in favor of it at that point. Are similar reasons?
That's exactly correct. Similar reasons. Just why give them another crack at you? Mm-hmm. And, I was against it. There were a lot of people against it, obviously, because it failed at the polls. But, the issue before the voters had a lot of language about we can do this and we can do that according to the code. Well, there's no definition. You didn't know what the code was except the one you currently had. And again, I've gone through the state statutes, and there's the one I'm looking at right now is powers and duties of cities. It's produced by the state government, and it talks about what you can do. And there's just not that much more that you can do, except it says that in a home rule you can possess all legislative powers not prohibited by law or the charter, and in the first class may exercise other powers not prohibited by law. So it's really not a whole lot. It's and the expense of changing over to a first-class city and stuff like that just gives the government more power. I see absolutely no benefit to the city. I mean, none. I'd be happy if somebody could point some out to me.
Okay, and that said, one thing I'll challenge, challenge is the wrong word, Jerry. You intimidate me. I'm kidding. But seriously, I would just put this out there and say, not to take up the argument of 1978, but to say at that point in time, it's my understanding, one of the main factors in defeating home rule at the time was the exclusionary factor that such the charter said by law, you'd have to have been a resident for 3 years prior to running for elected office.
That was one thing that was proposed in the charter, but the courts had decreed that to be illegal. And of course, the charter or any ordinance that the city now passes always contains an exclusionary section in there that if any portion of this law, ordinance, whatever, shall be deemed invalid by the courts, the rest of them are still in full force and effect. So
good point. Now, so you were there. I was too, but I was only 6 years old, for heaven's sake. You can't blame me. So at the time, it's your understanding, Jerry, that home rule failed in Homer simply for the fact that it was, would you say it's simple, and would you say that a main contributing factor to its failing was then the potential overreach on a local level?
That was my impression, although there was certain amount of controversy over the 3-year rule, and a lot of people didn't like that.
So you're saying, just to clarify, and I want to kind of encapsulate this and say, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that we can petition our local government under first-class statute, basically being a general law city. We now have the ability to petition our government and vote as a group and say we shall become a strong mayor form of government here and disband with the idea of a hired manager and go to a strong mayor. That's something we can do without the home rule charter, and that's right now we could begin that petition.
Absolutely, you could begin that right now, and you talk about giving power back to the people. You don't have any control except through the council, and that's illusory at best. I've served on the council, and they take a lot of liberties that you don't know about and can't do a whole lot about. But right now, the council is the one that picks the city manager. And if they decide that they're done with the city manager, it costs a ton of money in severance fees and departure packages and things like that to get rid of the dude. You want to put the power back in the hands of the people, have a strong mayor form of government, and if you don't like what the mayor's doing, then at the next election you vote him out and vote somebody else in.
And that is exactly what I'm looking for. Jerry Anderson, thank you for taking the time to not only research the facts and dig into this, but also take time to be here with me today on the radio. I appreciate it, and I'm going to give this a lot of consideration. Next week, we've invited Ken Kastner to come on the program and deliver his message for home rule and why he thinks that now is the time for home rule. So, Jerry, I'll be sure to send you a copy of that program as well, since you're not in the listening footprint right now.
I'd appreciate that, and you can also, you need to ask Ken, just what things can we do that you would like to do under a home rule charter? And I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of specifics. It's going to be say, we can do everything that the state doesn't actively prohibit. Well, what are those things? It's illusory. It's not there.
Jerry Anderson, never backing down from a discussion, debate, or an argument, and I appreciate you sharing your time with us today, Jerry. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, but I have changed my mind on things from time to time.
Open-minded. I like that. I like him even better now. I think it's important to keep an open mind as long as you stay true to your principles, and Jerry Anderson does just that. I'm Chris Story. Dave Becker's your engineer and producer of the greatest show on earth. We'll be back with more here on Alaska Matters Radio. All right, Jerry Anderson makes a good point. I mean, if your goal, if what you seek is to put the power in the hands of the people to change the direction of a community, maybe home rule is not the answer. Well, I too, as I just commended Jerry for having an open mind, I'll keep my mind open until next week, and then we'll talk with Ken Kastner, who's agreed to take up the other side of the coin. Ken is the founding father, if you will, of this charter initiative that I've heretofore been a supporter of, so long as, and I made this clear right from the start, so long as our charter will include a provision for strong mayor form of government. That's been my bottom line right from the start. So we'll find out what Ken Kastner has to say next week. Thank you to Jerry Anderson. I know he's very busy, and that was, I just appreciate that, and I know you probably do as well. I'd like to send you out to Blackwater Bend Espresso. Here's your question one more time. We've already had a ton of entries, but I want you to have a chance as well. And by the way, special giveaway in the second half of the show. A special giveaway. So if you miss out on the Blackwater Bend Espresso, that's going to hurt. But I'll tell you what. For those of you I'd like to console, we have a special giveaway. What is it? You'll have to listen to the second half of the show. Yeah, I did that on purpose. It's big. Let me just put it this way. It's a nice big giveaway. All right, here's your question for the Blackwater Bend Espresso Alaskan Mindbender question. When was the last time Mount Augustine erupted? 1986, 2006, or 1976? Got a Proposition 1, I'm trying to figure out how to organize my thoughts here for the remainder of the program, because I never want to cheat you. I never want you to leave this show thinking, I wanted more. Oh, I wish he had finished his point. Let's do a little history. Did you know, as we approach Christmas, I know it's too soon, it's not even Halloween yet. All right, 1857, the song Jingle Bells was written by James Pierpont and was copywritten as what? One Horse Open Sleigh. In 1857. I don't know why, but I felt like that was probably a much newer song than that. Anyway, didn't realize that. 1857. 1974, on this day in history, President Ford announced conditional amnesty for Vietnam deserters returning to America from Canada and elsewhere, but probably by and large Canada. 1974. 1838, James Jerome Hill was born. J.J. Hill, of course, the railway king, connected America coast to coast by railway. J.J. Hill, giant industrialist. 1908, General Motors was formed in Flint, Michigan by William Durant. I wonder what he'd think of now, the people of Flint and Detroit asking for the United Nations to come in and mandate that water is a human right such that the city, even though it's bankrupt and even though you're not paying your bill, must deliver your water and take away your sewage as a human right. Even though everybody's going bankrupt in Detroit. Can you just imagine what William Durant would think now of his company run practically into the ground by the government? First, well, we know who ran into the ground first, then the government took over and tried to finish the job. Hey, I want to thank the Anchor River Inn. My friend Dave Webb and his wife Melanie actually took a trip lately. The not normal, because he's not normal, but the usual producer, well, he chose not to be here, so I'm sorry. He gets what he gets. So the not normal producer of Alaska Matters Radio, David Webb, and his wife took a trip around Alaska. They called it a staycation. They went around Alaska. Now, let me just tell you something. Before they even got 20 miles out of town, they didn't even get 20 miles out of town, and they stopped for their first visit. Where? Anchor River Inn. That's right. Dave says he and Melly had the best meal of their entire trip right here in Anchor Point. Good, home-cooked, hearty food to get their journey started. Those are his words, not mine. Home-cooked, hearty food to get their trip started. And so I'm asking you, what are you waiting for? An invitation? Well, here it is. The Klutz family officially invites you to join them for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or all three. Anchor River Inn, the heartbeat of Anchor Point for more than 50 years. Thank you to Jesse Klutz and family. Online, they operate the Anchor Cam, Costs you nothing. Go there, anchorriverin.com, anchorriverin.com, and you can check out the Anchor Cam 24/7, 365. I'm debating what to talk about next. I've got this thing on the Billings Gazette. I've got a letter to the editor out of Billings Gazette. I've got the IllinoisPolicy.org story talking about food stamp enrollment 2-to-1 over job creation. This really cool idea out of California that I think could revolutionize your business. Prop 1 reality check. Let's do that. Let's do that because that's really hot right now. BP has announced 475 jobs may be disappearing. Okay, layoffs coming up. So you're beginning to see lots of people on Facebook, on social media, in your life, elsewhere, on talk radio, etc., talk about, here we go. Thanks a lot, Alaska. You voted down Prop 1, and now look. They're taking it. We told you. We tried to tell you. Here's what I say to that. Okay, you might have been somebody that opposed Proposition 1, or you might have been in favor of it. But here's what I'm saying. It's not over. It will never be over. As long as there's billions of dollars on the line, you cannot take your eye off of the ball, even for a moment. All right? Now, that said, you and I elected representatives to go to Juneau. To what? Represent us. Meaning the debate belongs on Capitol Hill in Juneau, not via initiative based on sound bites and half-truths. And that goes on either side of that debate. There was, $15 million spent on that debate in the public square, and that is not where sound policy like this, like tax policy, should and is made best. Now, you lived under Sarah Palin's, of course, albeit a modified version of what Sarah originally crafted with her advisors, and people on the Hill called ACEs. Now, you saw a decline. You saw layoffs. You saw a decline in oil production, and TAP's line began to slow down. You saw all of that, and we lived through it. And now 6 years later comes SB 21. Before it's even had a chance to breathe, here comes the politicians out there with their petitions, looking to politic and use the town square to do it. And I say, you know what? If you're not happy with the layoff announcements, you need to let Paul Seaton know. You need to let Gary Stevens know. You need to let Senator Peter Micciche know. And if Senator Peter Micciche is willing to have the conversation, nobody knows more about oil production than him. Talk to him. Talk to your representatives. Talk to the people that are down in Juneau, going back to Juneau, looking to go back to Juneau, about your thoughts on the matter. And that's where the debate belongs, is in the Juneau on Capitol Hill. That's where tax reform should belong. And, as long as there's billions of dollars worth of oil in the ground, come on. We're never going to be away from it. I'm Chris Story. Dave Becker is your engineer-producer today. We've got more coming up, possibly Corbin Arno, if we can reach him. We've got business secrets. We've got much, much more. Alaskan Mindbender coming up. We've got it all. Hey, it's B.B. King's birthday. Let's go into the news with a little B.B. King and you too. I'm Chris Story. Don't go anywhere. Much more to come here on what my mom calls the greatest show on earth.